All right, and we are live. Thank you guys for joining me on this experiment, really. I did not have time to edit this week's YouTube video before a trip, so I thought I would go ahead and do the deck separately. And just do the presentation as one, and then upload it as is. So, if you're just joining us and you haven't seen one of my videos before, my name is Ben Yenny, and I'm not a filmmaker. I help filmmakers make money from their movies. And today we are talking about whether or not film is still moderately reversely dependent on the economy, or to put it in more simple terms, is film still recession-proof? Well, let's just go ahead and get started. One second. There we are. So, this is actually going to be a little bit of a series, and I'll do another one in about 2 weeks. Next week I'm going to be doing a live stream on the American film market. But the first one, we're going to talk about the first thing most filmmakers will tell you when you talk about film investment as it pertains to the economy, and that is that film is still mildly reversely dependent on the economy. In other words, film tends to do better when there's a recession. I've heard this enough that I actually wanted to look in on the data for it. And I have a hypothesis as to whether or not this is true. But that hypothesis changed over the course of doing my research. But before we even get into whether or not film is mildly reversely dependent on the economy, we should talk a little bit about why so many of us assume that there is a recession coming. And there's several reasons. One is a lineup of historical trends. And by that I mean there are certain economic factors that have been matched across many different recessions and depressions, one of which is the deregulation of the economy as a whole. And honestly, we would probably already be in a recession had most of the tax cuts that the U.S. president put in not been used to artificially inflate the stock market via stock buybacks, but I'm actually trying very hard to not make this a political video. But the other thing is we're looking at a couple of other things, like the fact that around the end of fiscal quarter 3 of last year, which would have been or this year rather, which would have been right around the end of June, is when we had the last major crash, or not crash, plummet in the stock market. And that often coincides with monthly, or in that case quarterly, missed payments. There's a huge annual set of payments that are going to be due throughout the banking sector on around the end of this month, either September 30th or October 1st. And if I were to put money anywhere, that's when I'd say this will happen, but it's not certain by any means. I personally think that it's most likely to happen then, but it might not happen until quarter 1 or quarter 2 of next year. So I spent a lot of time over the last week, well, not a lot, but I put a fair amount of time into researching where the economy was in 2008 and where the film industry was in 2008, and tried to do my best in comparing where it is now. The biggest thing worth noting is that, as most every filmmaker knows, since 2009, the physical media has lost a huge amount of its market share. And while ticket revenue is steadily increasing, ticket sales are stagnant or decreasing, at least at the box office mainly. We'll get more into those numbers later. And finally, digital is growing to take up more and more of the marketplace, but at least transactional revenue from digital, like EST and VOD, and TVOD, I should say, is taking in less revenue than physical media, even in today's day and age. And that is a little crazy to me. So, why do people say film is still recession-proof? Historically, it's been one of the cheapest ways to get out. And even when times are tough, people need to get out and people need an escape. And for a long time, film was at least among the most cost-effective of escapes, especially when it comes to getting out. Here's a chart from the MPAA's theme report, which is theatrical and home entertainment movie. I forget the whole thing. I'll link to it in the comments of at least the YouTube version of this video. And, or not the comments, the description. And, as compared to going to an NFL game or any sports game or a theme park for a family of four, going to the movies is much more affordable, and people still need family bonding time outside of the house. The big thing this I feels doesn't really do a good job at taking into account, however, is that the lower end of the economic spectrum in the U.S. is having a really hard time of it right now. According to one report, about 40% of U.S. households couldn't afford a $400 emergency, and they also couldn't afford, and 60% of U.S. households couldn't afford a $1,000 emergency. The people who can't afford a $400 emergency, I find it doubtful that they would be able to afford going to even a $40 movie on any level of a regular basis. And also in San Francisco here, movies are not that cheap. It costs to go to anything except a matinee at the main theater, the main chain theater here in the US, or here in San Francisco, is somewhere around $16 to $20 a head. Not really including ticket upcharges like 3D and IMAX upgrades. Part of what I'm trying to allude to here is that film is facing greater competition from sources we haven't really seen before. In the words of Reed Hastings, in an article from CNBC, you can see the link there, I will also put it in the description. Our focus is not Disney Plus, Amazon, or others, but on how we can improve our experience for others. We compete with and lose to Fortnite more than HBO. When YouTube went down globally for a few minutes in October, our viewing and signups spiked for that time. So Netflix doesn't really view Disney Plus or the new Time Warner Plus or the HBO Now Plus, I think it is. I don't remember if it's Now or Go. And all of these other things as its primary competition. They view web and new media and digital gaming as their competition for attention. So this leads us to a point that films are no longer the cheapest widely available form of entertainment. You can get dozens of hours of entertainment out of a free mobile game just for watching a couple of ads. Well, probably more than a couple. But, or even if you pay a couple bucks for a mobile game, you'd be absolutely shocked at the quality of many of them. So when people have less money to spend and a lot of time to kill, I think they're going to look for a more reasonable price per hour sort of thing. Or hour of entertainment, I should say. So where do people get their entertainment? Again, this is from the theme report. Until I get to the graphs and charts I made myself towards the end of the report, everything I show is going to be from that same theme report. If you're already on my email list, you will actually have received that as one of the recommended reading things from an email blast I did last week. So this is the amount of time the average American spends with their different sorts of devices and different sorts of media. TV still takes up a pretty big chunk. Radio takes up more than I would have expected. Print and other traditional media are unsurprisingly a very small percentage, but more than 50% of time are spent on digital, with the majority of that time being spent on mobile. People spend almost as much time on mobile as they do with traditional television, which is very different from what it used to be, and the mobile sector is still growing rapidly. And I think we can expect something like that from that sort of trend to continue in the near future. The big thing to keep in mind about people using their mobile device as a primary viewing screen as opposed to the secondary screen, which we've thought it would be for a while, is that there's a lot more competition within this than there is on that TV over there that's off screen. Going back to those mobile games, Fortnite and whatever else you want to go with there. So where do people actually watch content these days? Right now, it is primarily on the last slide was what devices they watch it on more, and more the sorts of media they consume. This is more the more traditional pay TV and online subscription, EST, VOD, and physical disc. So other different forms of media people consume when watching motion pictures, to include things like television and new media and everything else there. And pay TV, and the biggest thing to take away from this graph, and the reason I included it, is that EST VOD is still significantly less than the people who never pay for... the people who actually spend money on EST VOD is far lower than the people who still spend money on physical media, which is quite scary given that physical media sales have been going down over time. And in general, VOD time spent is higher than it basically ever has been. But a lot of that comes down to more things like online subscriptions than it does actual transactional revenue. But the thing is, the highest profit margin for any filmmaker is in transactional. But if nobody's willing to fork over the money, it starts to become harder and harder for us to support ourselves as filmmakers. I forgot to put a key on this one, but this is essentially the very dark blue on the top is people who are not regular moviegoers. The middle blue is people who are regular moviegoers, and the light greenish blue are extremely heavy moviegoers. If you download the theme report, you'll see that sort of thing repeat itself pretty regularly. So in pretty much every category, extremely heavy movie viewers tend to adopt technologies for entertainment much sooner than other sorts, than people who don't watch movies regularly. This could have a lot to do with the fact that a lot of these extremely heavy moviegoers are much younger, so they're just more likely to adopt new technologies in general, but that may or may not be the whole case. I do not believe there is adequate evidence in that theme report to support that. I could be wrong, though. Now, and as you will see over time, the average time spent per day with major media by US adults has been going down by a pretty significant margin with everything except mobile, and mobile is still surging. Mobile is taking up the gap on where everyone spends the vast majority of their time. So this is a year-over-year graph showing what's happened with cable, satellite, online subscription video, and IPTV. And I believe that's an internet protocol TV. That would be something like Sling. Sling hasn't gotten a lot of additional traction over where they were originally. But while cable revenues are growing, and satellite are largely stagnant, the total number of cable subscriptions has been going down. Same with satellite. But online subscription and IPTV have been going up. Why is this important? What does this have to do with a film recession? Why is this on topic? A lot of it comes down to where will people spend their time when they have to cut expenses. And I think it's very likely that we'll see online subscription video continue to surge, as it has been, in both revenue and especially in user counts. And we might actually be starting to see a fall in cable television revenue in the near future. Cord cutters are increasingly the norm, and that's been the case for a while, but I think the shock to the system of a recession would likely accelerate that trend. That's more of an educated opinion on my part than it is necessarily backed by any specific set of data. And yeah, the and you'll see the same thing that we just saw there, which is the global. This is even the same chart. Whoops. So, as I was saying earlier, mobile devices bring significant competition for attention, and they make the competitive landscape for people's attention when they have to entertain themselves much, much, much greater. And that's why things like YouTube and mobile games are going to be much more significant players in the near future than they have been as it comes to competition with our industry. This is a little bit about what I was talking about with who actually watches content where, and the people who watch most of these, with the exception of pay TV, tend to vastly skew towards younger people, whereas people who watch pay TV tend to be significantly 40 plus and even more 50 plus. Also, women tend to watch more pay TV and more online subscriptions, but men tend to actually pay for their media more, according to this data. And here's a little bit more on the recent trends with physical versus digital. And as you can see, digital has been making more money there. And I may have misread this chart when I was speaking earlier. So physical has been going down, but digital has actually rapidly been rising, and overall revenue has been going up substantially. I misread this chart the last time I did it on the in what I was saying about earlier, and I'm a little embarrassed, but this is the right. I think I read this as units, not revenue. So anyway, this is data I compiled from The Numbers, which is year over year physical media revenue since 2006, because it's about as far back as I could actually find reliable data on. And the dark gray is DVD sales, red is Blu-ray, and light gray is combined physical media sales. The top is total revenue, the bottom is units. And as you can see, and this is all based on the top 100 selling DVDs, because it's the best metric I could find. So as you can see, in 2006, 2007, DVD actually was doing pretty well, and then the recession hit in 2008, and yes, while it was towards the end of 2008, that's when most of the DVDs are sold as Christmas gifts, so it actually hurt the industry more than we might have expected otherwise that year. And then Blu-ray was introduced the next year, and both sales and units increased for a couple of years, and then started to fall dramatically afterwards, which is notably different from the introduction of VHS or DVD after VHS. This is a bit more of what happened. And the backdrop of all of this is just the U.S. Real gross domestic product as taken from, I believe, Wikipedia. And it will be, you'll see those graphs throughout the rest of these slides. The reason it's there is more just to serve as a baseline for the economy at the time. So theatrical has been rising. This is also not the entirety of the theatrical market, because I do some direct comparisons with ticket prices and a few other things, including some units. On the last slide, I actually used the top 100 here. And on average, the top 100 take up about 80% of the, anywhere between 80 and 90% of the U.S. domestic theatrical market. And what I was saying before is that while U.S. tickets or U.S. box office revenues may be going up slightly, U.S. ticket sales are trending down slightly. It will be very interesting to see what happens in the event of a recession in the near future. And so the average ticket price here, and this is not just average ticket prices, this is also average unit price for a DVD or a physical media, or a Blu-ray, and in general. And the ticket prices are still lower than the physical media, but they are either stagnant or trending downwards, whereas ticket prices are going up. And just to actually see a little bit more of the fluctuations, this one does start at $5 and goes to $40 as opposed to starting at $0 where the rest of them did. So finally, it's really difficult, if not impossible, to tell whether film is still mildly reversely dependent on the economy until the next recession hits, and probably not until a year or so after that. My bet is that film may no longer be mildly reversely dependent. It may be largely independent on the economy right now. But the independent film world is likely to be greatly affected by the ebb and flow of the greater economy. And if transactional VOD numbers take a hit, it's going to be a bit of a problem for independent filmmakers. So if you are anyone beyond who's not a filmmaker, but happens to have filmmaker friends while you're watching this, buy their DVD, buy their stuff, support them on Patreon, do whatever you need to actually keep them creating content, because an economic crunch is likely to hurt them more than a lot. It's likely to disproportionately affect the long tail of the film market. At least, that's my estimate. I would have loved to do more on video on demand numbers on there, but there aren't really any widely available. Next time we do a video like this, we are going to be looking at how filmmakers can better survive the industry. and how filmmakers can better survive a recession, what they should be planning on, and there are actually some decent upsides depending on your particular position when the recession hits. So like and subscribe for more of that. And thank you very much. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, the comment question is, what was the last movie you bought on transactional video on demand, and what platform did you buy it on? If you like this sort of content and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube. And also, if you want to be extra awesome, drop a couple bucks on my Patreon. And finally, this is not my full-time gig. This is my if my full-time gig is being a producer, consulting producer, and producer's rep. If you would like me to consult on your project, great. Submit your film. It's just theguerrillarep.com/submit. And if you'd like to be if you'd like more content like this delivered to your inbox on a semi-regular basis, go ahead and join my mailing list. That's just theguerrillarep.com/resources. And finally, the Patreon was patreon.com/theguerrillarep. Thank you so much, and see you next week.